I went into De Soto National Forest that night believing experience and a loaded sidearm were enough to keep me alive. By the time the woods went silent, I understood how wrong that belief was, and why some things don't need permission to hunt you. My name is Ethan Cole Matthews. I'm 37 years old, born and raised in Laurel, Jones County, Mississippi. At the time this happened, I'd been working for 8 years as a pipeline integrity inspector, the kind of job that sounds boring until you realize most of it happens alone, at night, miles from help, walking lines that cut straight through places people don't go anymore. This happened on October 17, 2022. I was assigned to a night leak survey inside De Soto National Forest, working a stretch of buried natural gas line that runs parallel to Forest Service Road 312, about 14 miles from the nearest paved road. The reason we worked nights was simple: less interference, cooler temperatures, better readings. I'd done this exact route 3 times before without incident. That night started like all the others. The temperature sat around 48 degrees, cold enough to sting my fingers when I took my gloves off, but not cold enough to see my breath unless I stood still. The air was heavy with humidity, the kind that clings to your skin even in October. There was no wind. No moon either, just a solid blanket of clouds pressing down on the treetops. I parked my 2018 Ford F-150 at a widened turnout along the road and logged my start time, 11:32 p.m. I clipped on my headlamp, slung my gear over my shoulder, and stepped into the tree line like I'd done 100 times before. I carried a FLIR handheld thermal monocular, a tablet for logging readings, and a Glock 19 on my right hip. Company policy didn't officially encourage firearms, but they didn't discourage them either. Too many inspectors had run into aggressive wildlife, or worse, people who didn't want questions asked about what they were doing out there. Cell service dropped off completely less than a mile in. That was normal. My radio crackled with static when I checked in with dispatch, then went quiet. Nearest coworker was finishing a job near Hattiesburg, almost 40 miles away. Alone didn't bother me. Silence didn't bother me. Forests at night have their own rhythm if you know how to listen. At least, they're supposed to. About 20 minutes into the survey, I noticed the first thing that didn't fit. The insects stopped. Not gradually, all at once. No cicadas. No crickets. No distant chirring hum. Just my boots crunching on pine needles and my own breathing inside my ears. I stopped walking and held still. Silence like that has weight to it. It presses in. Makes you aware of space. Of distance. Of how far sound should carry but doesn't. I told myself it was nothing. Cold snap. Pressure change. I kept moving. That's when the smell hit me. It came in low and thick, like I'd stepped into it. Wet dog, strong enough to wrinkle my nose, mixed with something else underneath, something sour and rotten, like old meat left too long in the sun. I've tracked black bear before. I've dealt with feral hogs. This wasn't either of those smells. I raised the thermal monocular and swept the tree line. At first, nothing. Just the dull gray wash of trunks and brush. Then, off to my left, about 70 yards out, a warm shape blinked into view. Tall. Narrow. Vertical. Before I could focus on it, the shape vanished. Not faded, gone, like someone had switched it off. I stood there longer than I should have, my thumb frozen on the thermal's control. I remember thinking how quiet my heartbeat sounded compared to the emptiness around me. Probably a hog, I muttered, more to hear my own voice than because I believed it. I logged the reading and kept walking, angling closer to the road. That's when I heard the first footstep behind me. Not a rustle. Not brush shifting. A step, heavy, deliberate, the sound of weight settling into soil. Then another. Far apart. Slow. I turned off my headlamp. Darkness swallowed everything beyond a few vague shapes. I listened hard, every muscle locked. Another step. Closer this time. Then the faint sound of wood bending, a branch snapping at shoulder height. That's when the realization started to creep in, cold and unwanted. Whatever was behind me wasn't moving like an animal on 4 legs. I reached down and rested my hand on my Glock, thumb brushing the grip. My palm was slick with sweat, despite the cold. I told myself it was a person. Some hunter. Someone messing with me. That explanation should have brought relief. It didn't. Because people don't move like that. And people don't smell like death soaked into wet fur. I backed toward the road, slow, careful not to crunch the leaves too loud. The footsteps matched me. Stop when I stopped. Move when I moved. That's when the forest went completely still. Not just quiet, empty. No distant owls. No breeze through the canopy. Even the feeling of space seemed to collapse, like the woods were holding their breath. I flicked my headlamp back on. The beam cut through the darkness and caught 2 points of light about 30 feet away, just inside the trees. They weren't glowing like a reflector. They were reflecting back too clean, too sharp, fixed at my eye level. Then the shape around them shifted. It rose. Not stepped forward. Not leaned up. It stood up. That's when I understood I wasn't dealing with a bear, or a hog, or a man playing games. And that's when everything I thought I knew about being alone in the woods stopped mattering. The thing didn't rush me. That was the first detail my brain latched onto, because it made no sense. Predators rush. People panic and rush. Whatever stood in front of me just watched. Those eyes stayed fixed on mine, unblinking, catching the beam of my headlamp and throwing it back like glass. I could finally make out the shape around them now that my light was steady. It was taller than I'd thought, easily 7.5 feet, maybe more. Its shoulders were broad enough that they nearly brushed the trees on either side, and its arms hung too long, the hands ending well past where its knees should have been. I heard it breathe. Not a growl yet. Just breathing. Slow. Heavy. Wet. Each inhale sounded like air being pulled through a throat that wasn't built for it, a low draw that vibrated faintly in my chest. Each exhale came out in a soft huff that fogged in the cold, drifting sideways instead of straight down like mine did. The smell hit harder when it stepped forward. It wasn't just wet dog anymore. There was iron in it now, old blood, coppery and sharp. My eyes watered, and I tasted something bitter on my tongue, like I'd bitten down on a penny. "Hey," I said, before I could stop myself. My voice cracked, loud and wrong in the silence. The thing tilted its head. Not like an animal does when it's confused, quick and jerky, but slow, deliberate, like it was studying the sound. Like it understood that noise had meaning. That's when my denial finally collapsed. Bears don't stand like that. They don't move their heads like that. And they sure as hell don't watch you with eyes that focused. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. Sweat ran down my spine, cold as it soaked into my shirt. My legs felt hollow, like they'd forgotten how to lock properly. I took one step back. So did it. The movement was wrong in a way that's hard to explain unless you've seen it. It wasn't clumsy or swaying. It was balanced. Controlled. When it moved, its knees bent backward slightly, like a dog's, but its hips rolled forward like a man's. Each step was quiet, impossibly quiet for something that big. The forest stayed dead around us. No bugs. No wind. No distant sounds of anything living. I drew my Glock. The motion felt slow, like my arms were underwater. The grip was slick in my hand, and my fingers shook so badly I was afraid I'd drop it. I didn't raise it right away. I just held it low, the muzzle pointed at the dirt between us. The thing noticed. Its shoulders tensed. The breathing changed, faster now, excited, almost curious. A low sound started deep in its chest, not quite a growl, more like a warning hum. "I don't want any trouble," I said. It didn't respond. Instead, it took another step closer, closing the distance to maybe 20 feet. I could see details now I wished I couldn't. The fur wasn't uniform. It was patchy, matted in places, thinner around the chest where dark skin showed through. Its face was unmistakably canine, the snout long and narrow, lips pulled back just enough to reveal teeth that were too long, too yellow. Saliva dripped from one side of its mouth and hit the leaves with a soft patter. I raised the gun. "Stop," I said, louder now. "Don't come any closer." For a moment, just a moment, I thought it might actually listen. Then it lunged. Not at me. Toward me. It covered half the distance in a single bound, so fast my brain lagged behind my eyes. I fired without thinking. The shot cracked through the forest like a bomb. Muzzle flash lit everything white for a split second. My ears rang, and the recoil jolted up my arms. The bullet hit dirt. The thing skidded to a stop 10 feet away, claws digging into the ground, shoulders rolling forward. It didn't flinch. Didn't yelp. Didn't even blink. Then it did something worse. It smiled. Not a human smile, no humor in it, but a baring of teeth, slow and deliberate, like it was showing me exactly what those teeth were for. A deep, full growl rolled out of it then, vibrating through the trees, through me. I turned and ran. I don't remember deciding to. 1 second I was standing there, gun up, and the next my legs were moving on their own, boots slamming into dirt and leaves as I sprinted for the road. My lungs burned instantly, cold air slicing into them like knives. Behind me, something crashed through the brush. Fast. Too fast. Branches snapped like twigs. I heard its breathing again, louder now, closer, and the thud of its footsteps shook the ground. I risked a glance over my shoulder and nearly fell. It was running on 2 legs. Not stumbling. Not awkward. Running. I broke out of the tree line and hit the road hard, skidding on gravel, nearly losing my footing. My truck sat where I'd left it, dark and silent, maybe 30 yards away. I fumbled for my keys, fingers numb, heart pounding so hard I thought I might black out. The sound behind me closed the distance frighteningly fast. I reached the truck, yanked the door open, and dove inside just as something slammed into the rear quarter panel. The whole vehicle rocked. Metal screamed. I slammed the door shut and locked it, hands shaking so badly I missed the ignition twice before the engine finally turned over. The headlights snapped on, flooding the road, and the trees beyond, with white light. The thing stood there, just off the road, framed in my beams. Up close, it was even bigger than I'd thought. Its chest rose and fell rapidly now, breath steaming. Its eyes reflected back, bright and unblinking, locked onto me. It took a step toward the truck. Then another. I threw the truck into gear and floored it, gravel spraying as I tore down the road. In the rearview mirror, I saw it move, not chasing yet, just watching. Like it knew this wasn't over. And deep down, as the forest swallowed the road ahead of me, I knew the same thing. I didn't stop driving until my hands started to cramp around the steering wheel. The road ahead was nothing but a narrow ribbon of dirt cutting through black walls of trees, my headlights tunneling through the darkness and giving me just enough vision to react before something killed me. Every shadow looked like movement. Every bend felt like an ambush waiting to happen. I checked the rearview mirror. At first, there was nothing. No shape. No glowing eyes. Just the empty road unspooling behind me. My breathing came out in harsh bursts, loud inside the cab, tasting like metal and panic. I told myself I'd outrun it. That whatever it was, it had decided to let me go. Then something parallel to the truck moved. Not on the road. In the trees. It kept pace with me, a darker blur flowing between trunks just beyond the reach of my headlights. I could see branches bow and snap as it passed, hear the faint, rhythmic thudding of its steps even over the engine. 40 miles an hour, maybe more, and it wasn't struggling. Jesus Christ, I whispered. The road dipped and curved, tires sliding slightly on loose gravel. I hit the brakes too hard and felt the back end fishtail before I corrected. That's when it slammed into the side of the truck. The impact was violent enough to shove me sideways in my seat. The door bowed inward with a deep metallic groan, and something scraped along the panel from front to back, long, deliberate lines that screamed claws instead of hooves. I floored it. The speedometer climbed past 50. The engine whined in protest, but the truck surged forward. I didn't care if I blew it. I just needed distance. Another hit came, this one to the bed. The whole truck shuddered, and I heard a heavy thump followed by the sound of something dragging along the tailgate. For one sickening second, I thought it had climbed on. I glanced up through the rear window. 2 hands slapped against the glass. They weren't paws. They weren't human either. Long fingers, too many joints, black claws digging into the metal frame as the window flexed inward. Its face rose into view between them, eyes blazing, teeth bared inches from my head. I screamed and swerved. The sudden movement threw it off balance. One hand slipped, claw screeching against metal, and then it was gone, rolling off into the darkness behind me. The weight vanished from the truck, and I didn't slow down to see if it got back up. My heart was beating so fast it hurt. Every breath came shallow and ragged, like my lungs couldn't keep up with my body's demand for oxygen. My vision tunneled, edges blurring as I focused on the pale strip of road ahead. I don't know how long I drove like that. Minutes felt like hours. Time stopped meaning anything beyond survive the next second. The forest eventually thinned, trees giving way to wider gaps, then fields. The road smoothed out beneath my tires, and I realized I'd hit pavement. I didn't slow until I saw a reflective sign flash past my headlights, County Road 29. Only then did I ease off the gas. I pulled onto the shoulder and slammed the truck into park. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I leaned forward until my forehead touched the steering wheel and laughed once, sharp and hysterical, before it turned into something dangerously close to sobbing. I was alive. Barely. Dawn crept in slow and gray, washing the world in color that felt unreal after so much darkness. When the sun finally cleared the tree line, I forced myself out of the truck. The damage made my stomach drop. Deep gouges ran along the driver's side door, metal peeled back like it had been raked by a massive rake. The bed was dented inward, the tailgate warped. On the rear window, smeared across the glass, was a handprint, long fingers, palm pressed flat, streaked with dirt and something darker I didn't want to think about. I walked back along the road a few yards, my legs weak, my head pounding. The tracks were there. Clear as day in the soft shoulder where it had come off the trees. 5 toes, each ending in a claw mark that dug deep into the dirt. The print measured just over 14 inches long, the heel sunk so far down I could see where weight had been driven straight through it. The stride between prints was almost 6 feet. Nothing in Mississippi walks like that. I found hair caught on the edge of my truck bed, tangled in the bent metal. It was coarse and dark, thicker than deer hair, not hollow like bear fur. I wrapped it in a rag without thinking, hands numb. When the sheriff finally arrived, he listened in silence as I told my story. He nodded in the right places, asked the right questions, and then did exactly what I expected. "Big black bear," he said, glancing at the tracks. "They get bolder this time of year." I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. The report said probable wildlife encounter. The damage went down as an animal strike. No mention of glowing eyes or bipedal tracks or hands on glass. I went home and didn't sleep for 2 days. When I finally did, I dreamed of the woods going quiet. Of eyes reflecting back at me from just beyond the light. I woke up gasping, heart racing, convinced something was standing at the foot of my bed. I don't work nights anymore. I don't go into forests after dark, and I don't tell this story to people who already have their minds made up. I know how it sounds. I know what it costs to say it out loud. But I also know what chased me through DeSoto National Forest that night. It didn't kill me. It didn't have to. Because sometimes surviving isn't the same thing as winning, and whatever was out there let me go, knowing I'd never forget it. And knowing, somewhere deep down, that it's still out there too. I thought the fear would fade once the sun came up. That's what people tell you, that monsters belong to the dark, and daylight puts things back where they're supposed to be. Order restored. Threat gone. But fear doesn't work like that when it's earned. When it's learned. By mid-morning, I was back home in Laurel, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I hadn't touched. The house smelled normal, cleaner, old wood, the faint bitterness of burned grounds. Every sound was familiar. Refrigerator humming. A truck passing outside. A dog barking 2 houses down. None of it helped. My hands were still shaking. I jumped every time a shadow moved across the window. When a gust of wind rattled the screen door, my heart spiked so hard it hurt. I kept replaying the night in fragments, like my mind was stuck on a loop it couldn't break, eyes in the dark, hands on glass, the way it smiled. Around noon, my phone started ringing. Work. Dispatch. A supervisor asking why my truck GPS showed a sudden, unexplained deviation from the inspection route and why I hadn't checked in. I told him there'd been an animal incident. I said bear. He accepted it too easily. Bears fit neatly into paperwork. Bears don't raise questions. But I couldn't let it go. By early afternoon, after a few hours of restless pacing, I drove back toward the forest. Not all the way in, just close enough to the county road where the pavement gave way to dirt. I parked where the sheriff and I had stood that morning and walked back to the shoulder where the tracks had been. They were still there. The sun made them impossible to dismiss. The impressions were too deep, too clean. Each toe ended in a distinct claw groove that cut forward, not down like a dog's. The heel was wrong too, elongated, angled like it carried weight upright. I crouched and measured one with my phone. 14¼ inches from heel to toe. I followed them a short distance, heart pounding again as they led off the road and vanished into the trees like they'd never been there at all. No drag marks. No signs of struggle. Just gone. On the drive home, I noticed things I hadn't before. Scratches on the truck bed I'd missed in the chaos. A dent near the roofline that sat higher than it should have, even for a standing bear. When I got back, I pulled the hair from the rag I'd stuffed it into and studied it in daylight. It was coarse. Thick. Dark gray with black tips. Not hollow. Not brittle. I sealed it in a plastic bag and shoved it into a drawer, telling myself I'd decide what to do with it later. I didn't sleep that night either. When I did drift off, it was shallow and broken. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that pressure again, the sensation of being watched, measured. I kept the bedroom light on until dawn, clock on the nightstand like that would matter if something decided to test the walls. Over the next few days, the calls started. Not official ones. Quiet ones. A buddy from high school messaged me asking if I'd been up in DeSoto Monday night. When I asked why, he sent me a screenshot from a local Facebook group. A blurry photo taken from a trail camera, two glowing eyes, too high off the ground, caught at the edge of a clearing. The post was already flooded with jokes. Bear standing up. Photoshop. Pareidolia. But the timestamp read October 18, 2022. 2:03 a.m. Less than 3 hours after I'd escaped. Another message came from a retired logger I barely knew, someone my dad had worked with years back. He didn't joke. Didn't speculate. He just said, "You saw it too, didn't you?" I asked him what he meant. He never replied. I reported the incident officially the following week, not because I expected answers, but because I needed it documented somewhere other than my head. The wildlife officer listened politely, flipped through photos of the damage, nodded at the measurements, and gave me the same explanation as the sheriff. Bear. When I pushed back, asked how a bear left 5-toed tracks with a 6-foot stride, how it ran upright for miles, how it put hands on my truck, the officer's expression changed. Not disbelief. Caution. Best thing you can do, he said, lowering his voice, is stay out of that area for a while. That was it. No follow-up. No investigation. I quit that route 2 weeks later. Took a pay cut. Switched to daytime inspections closer to town. My supervisor didn't argue. He didn't ask questions either. At night, I started noticing sounds I'd never paid attention to before. A branch scraping the siding. Wind moving through trees. Dogs barking all at once, then stopping. Each time, my body reacted before my mind could. Muscles tensing, breath hitching, heart racing. I stopped hiking. Stopped camping. Stopped taking back roads after dark. Friends told me I was overreacting. That fear fades if you don't feed it. Maybe that's true for things you imagine. But I didn't imagine this. Sometimes, driving home at dusk, I catch myself scanning the tree line, measuring distances without thinking. Watching shadows. Looking for movement that doesn't fit. I still have the hair sample. Still have photos of the tracks, the damage. Proof that something real crossed my path that night and chose not to finish the job. People ask me why I'm telling this now. It's not for attention. And it's not because I need validation. It's because places like DeSoto National Forest don't change. They don't forget. Whatever walked out of those woods didn't disappear, it just went back to living the way it always had. And if it happened to me once, on a quiet October night with no witnesses and no cameras, then it can happen again. The woods don't care what you believe. They only care whether you're alone. By the time winter settled in, I started to understand something I didn't want to admit. What happened to me didn't end on Forest Service Road 312. It followed me home. Not in the way horror movies show it. No shapes at my window, no footsteps on the roof, but in quieter, more corrosive ways. Fear that rewires how you move through the world. Awareness that never shuts off. The constant calculation of distance, light, and escape routes. I became someone who listened differently. Every sound had layers now. I didn't just hear dogs barking, I counted how many, how far apart, how suddenly they stopped. I didn't just hear wind in the trees, I noticed when it moved low instead of high, when it carried a smell that didn't belong. And the smell, that was the worst part. Every now and then, usually late at night or just before dawn, I'd catch a faint hint of it. Wet fur. Rot. Iron. It never lasted more than a second, and it was always gone before I could be sure it was real. But my body reacted instantly, heart racing, skin prickling, breath catching in my throat. I stopped trusting my own reactions after a while. That scared me almost as much as the encounter itself. In January, I finally broke down and took the hair sample to a private lab in Jackson. I didn't tell them where it came from. I just said I'd found it on my property and wanted it identified. The results came back 2 weeks later. Inconclusive. Not human. Not canine. Not bear. The technician told me it was likely degraded or contaminated, that environmental exposure can confuse things. He smiled when he said it, like that explanation should have been comforting. It wasn't. Because even science, when it doesn't have an answer, still leaves a space where something else can exist. Around the same time, I started finding stories online. Not polished articles or documentaries, posts buried in forums, comments under local news reports, messages shared quietly and deleted just as fast. Different people. Different towns. Same details. Eyes too high off the ground. Running upright. The smell. The silence before it appears. One account came from a hunter near Wiggins. Another from a couple driving back from Hattiesburg late one night. A third from a forestry worker who quit his job without explanation. None of them used the same words. They didn't have to. I knew exactly what they were talking about. In March, a coworker asked me if I wanted to cover a night shift near the forest. Good pay, easy work. I surprised myself with how fast my answer came out. No. He laughed, said I was getting soft. I didn't explain. Some things aren't worth defending. You either know, or you don't. Spring brought longer days, warmer nights, and with them, a strange kind of guilt. Life moved on. The woods turned green again. People hiked, camped, hunted. Kids posted smiling photos at trailheads not far from where I'd run for my life. I wondered how many of them felt that warning in their gut and ignored it. Because I'd ignored it too. I thought back to the moment when the insects went quiet. When the thermal image vanished. When every instinct I had told me something was wrong, and I kept going anyway because experience told me I'd be fine. That's the lie we tell ourselves, that familiarity equals safety. It doesn't. In late April, I drove past the turnoff for Forest Service Road 312 for the first time since the incident. I didn't plan to. I was heading south on business, distracted, lost in thought. The sign appeared in my headlights, reflective letters flashing white, and my chest tightened like something had reached inside and squeezed. I slowed without meaning to. The road looked harmless in daylight. Just dirt and trees and sunlight filtering through pine needles. Birds moved in the branches. Leaves rustled in the breeze. Everything looked alive. Too alive. I pulled over for maybe 10 seconds. Long enough to feel that familiar pressure building behind my eyes. Long enough to imagine stepping out, walking just a few yards into the trees, convincing myself I was stronger than fear. I didn't do it. I drove on, hands tight on the wheel, heart pounding like I'd just escaped again. That night, I dreamed of the forest going silent. But this time, I didn't run. I stood there, frozen, watching the trees as something moved just beyond my vision. I never saw it, not fully, but I felt its attention settle on me like weight. When I woke up, my sheets were twisted around my legs, soaked with sweat. I realized then that surviving doesn't mean you leave something behind. Sometimes, it means you carry it. I don't tell people what I think that thing was. Labels don't help. Werewolf. Dogman. Cryptid. They're just words we use to give shape to fear. What matters is what it did, and what it didn't do. It could have caught me. It chose not to. That choice haunts me more than an attack ever could, because it implies intent. Judgment. A decision made by something that understood exactly what I was. Prey. I'm telling this story now because someone listening might find themselves where I was, alone, confident, dismissing that quiet internal alarm because logic says everything's fine. If that happens, don't be like me. Leave. Don't wait for proof. Don't wait for eyes in the dark or hands on glass. Don't wait for the woods to teach you how small you really are. Because some things don't need a full moon, or a legend, or your belief to exist. They just need you to stay a little too long. And once they know where you are, the woods will remember, even if you survive. Especially if you survive. By the time summer arrived, I'd stopped pretending this was something I could file away as a bad night and move past. The problem with surviving something like that is the way it rewrites your sense of normal. Before October 17th, the world had rules. Animals behaved like animals. Danger followed patterns. Now everything felt provisional, like the rules only applied until something stronger decided they didn't. I finally went back to DeSoto in June of 2023. Not at night. Never at night. I went mid-morning, under a high, clear sun, with 2 other people, my cousin Mark and a friend of his who worked construction and didn't scare easily. I didn't tell them everything beforehand. I just said I wanted to check a location where I'd had a bad wildlife encounter. That lie sat heavy in my chest as we drove. The forest looked ordinary. Almost inviting. Sunlight cut through the canopy in long green shafts. Cicadas screamed from the trees. Birds hopped through the undergrowth. Life everywhere. That should have reassured me. It didn't. We parked near the same turnout where I'd left my truck that night. The ground had been churned up since then. Tire tracks, rain erosion, new growth, but as we walked farther in, my stomach tightened. I recognized landmarks I hadn't realized I'd memorized: a lightning-split pine, a shallow ditch, the bend in the road where I'd first turned and run. This where it happened? Mark asked. I nodded. We didn't go far off the road. Maybe 20 yards. But even in daylight, something felt off. The air was heavier there, thick in a way I couldn't explain. My skin prickled like I'd brushed against static. Then Mark stopped. Hold up, he said. He crouched and pointed at the ground. The prints weren't fresh, but they were unmistakable. Pressed into a patch of clay soil near the tree line were partial impressions, eroded, softened by time, but still there. Too long. Too narrow. The toe spacing wrong. 5 of them, faint but visible if you knew what to look for. Mark frowned. That ain't a deer. His friend didn't laugh. Didn't joke. He just stared at the ground for a long moment and said, "That's not a bear either." I felt something loosen in my chest. Not relief, validation. The quiet, terrifying comfort of knowing I hadn't been alone in what I saw. We didn't stay long after that. On the way back to the truck, I found something else. High on the trunk of a pine, over 7 feet up, were long, shallow gouges in the bark. Old. Weathered. Parallel. Too evenly spaced to be random damage. I touched one with my fingertips and felt the memory surge back so strong it made me dizzy. The height. The reach. The ease with which it had moved through that space. Whatever it was, it belonged there. I didn't. After that trip, the anxiety shifted into something sharper. I became hyper-aware of patterns. Of reports. Of absences. I started tracking sightings, not officially, not publicly. Just for myself. Dates. Locations. Details people mentioned before deleting posts or locking threads. There were clusters. Spikes in reports during late fall and early spring. Most of them near dense forest or long stretches of rural road. Always the same themes. The silence. The smell. The feeling of being sized up. And always the same ending. Escape. Barely. No bodies. No captures. No clear footage. Just people who got away and carried the weight of it afterward. I reached out to one of them, a man from Stone County who'd posted about seeing something tall and wrong cross Highway 49 late one night. He responded once, cautiously, then stopped replying after I asked too many specific questions. I didn't blame him. Talking about it feels like inviting it back into your life. By fall, I noticed the changes in myself had settled into permanence. I slept lightly. I avoided windows at night. I kept outdoor lights on until sunrise. I carried my Glock everywhere it was legal, even though some part of me knew how little it had mattered. Fear makes you do contradictory things. It tells you to arm yourself, even when you've already learned how small that protection really is. One night in October, almost exactly a year later, I was driving home late from a friend's place when the road ahead went quiet. No cars. No headlights. Just trees and darkness and the steady hum of my engine. Then the smell hit me. Faint. Distant. Gone almost as soon as I noticed it. Wet fur. Iron. My grip tightened on the wheel. I slowed, scanning the shoulders, the tree line, the space where something might step out. Nothing happened. I drove on. But my heart didn't slow for a long time. That was when it finally sank in. This wasn't over. It never would be. Because encounters like mine don't end with closure. They end with awareness. With the knowledge that the world still holds things we don't catalog, don't control, don't understand, and that sometimes, those things notice us back. I've been asked why I don't push harder. Why I don't demand answers or go public in a louder way. The truth is, I've seen what happens to people who do. they get dismissed, ridiculed, reduced to a story people tell for entertainment instead of a warning. I don't need belief. I need people to listen to themselves. Because the most important moment that night wasn't when I saw it. It was when the woods went quiet, and I kept walking anyway. If you ever find yourself somewhere remote and that silence drops like a curtain, don't stand there trying to explain it. Don't wait for proof. Don't tell yourself you're being dramatic. Leave. Get distance. Get light. Get help. And if you make it out, understand this. Surviving doesn't mean you were stronger. It doesn't mean you were smarter. Sometimes it just means whatever was watching you decided to let you go. And once you understand that, you'll never walk through the dark the same way again. By the time another year passed, I stopped thinking of what happened to me as an event. It was a condition. Something permanent, like a scar you don't see anymore but feel every time the weather changes. Life went on in the obvious ways. I worked, paid bills, saw friends, but underneath it all ran a quieter current of vigilance. A constant awareness of exits. Of shadows. Of silence. Especially silence. I learned that silence has layers. There's the normal kind, the peaceful kind. And then there's the wrong kind, the kind that arrives all at once, like someone flipped a switch. When that happens now, my body reacts before my mind does. My shoulders tense. My breathing slows. My vision narrows. I'm back on Forest Service Road 312 in my head every time. People assume fear fades with time. That distance dulls it. What actually happens is worse. Fear becomes efficient. It doesn't scream anymore. It whispers. It taps you on the shoulder and reminds you what's possible. I never went back into DeSoto National Forest. Not once. I've driven past it dozens of times since, always during daylight, always without stopping. Sometimes I catch sight of the trees stretching back from the road, endless and indifferent, and I feel that familiar pressure behind my eyes. The sense that something is still there, living its life exactly as it always has. Unbothered. In early 2024, I heard about a woman in Pearl River County who broke down on a rural road late at night. Hospice nurse. Car trouble. Fog. The details circulated quietly at first, then vanished like they always do. But the ending was familiar. She escaped at dawn. Barely. When I read that, I sat back in my chair and closed my eyes. Not because I was surprised, but because it confirmed what I already knew. These aren't isolated incidents. They're overlaps. Moments when human routines cross paths with something that doesn't care about schedules, or jobs, or explanations. Something that lives by different rules and doesn't announce itself unless it wants to. I don't think it followed me home. I don't think it watches me from the woods near my house or waits for me to slip up. That's not how it felt. What it did feel like, what still feels true, is that I wandered into its territory, and for a short window of time, I was allowed to exist there. Then I was dismissed. That's a hard thing to accept, especially if you've spent your life believing humans sit at the top of the food chain. That we're in control. That we understand the world we live in. We don't. We just get comfortable enough to forget that fact. Sometimes people ask me what I think it was. I can tell they're hoping for a word that fits neatly into a box. Something they've heard before. Something they can nod at and file away. I don't give them one. Because the moment you name something, you stop listening to it. Call it a werewolf. Call it a dogman. Call it a cryptid. None of that changes what it did, or how it behaved, or the intelligence in its eyes when it watched me decide whether to run. What matters is this: it knew the woods. It knew the road. It knew me. And it knew exactly how far to go. I've replayed that moment more times than I can count, the second before it lunged, the way it stopped short, the way it smiled. Not with joy. Not with anger. With certainty. That expression comes back to me sometimes when I'm half asleep, and I wake up with my jaw clenched and my heart racing, convinced I've missed something important. Maybe I have. Maybe the lesson isn't about monsters at all. Maybe it's about arrogance. About how easily we convince ourselves we belong everywhere we step foot. About how dangerous it is to ignore instincts because logic says you should be safe. I tell this story now for one reason only. If you ever find yourself alone, on a back road, deep in the woods, somewhere far from help, and the world suddenly goes quiet, don't wait for confirmation. Don't tell yourself it's nothing. Don't stand there trying to make sense of it. Leave. Turn around. Get light. get distance. Because the thing that scares me most isn't what I saw that night. It's what I learned afterward. That there are places where we are tolerated, not welcome. That survival doesn't always come from strength or skill. That sometimes the only reason you walk away is because something else allows it. I survived DeSoto National Forest. But part of me never really left. Every time I hear the woods go quiet, even in memory, I'm back there again, standing in the beam of my own headlamp, staring at eyes that reflected my fear perfectly. I know I wasn't alone that night. And I know, without any doubt at all, that whatever watched me walk away is still out there, waiting for the next person who stays just a little too long.